Hey guys, this is Kevin. In yesterday's video, I was talking about Filipino culture and respect, and I specifically was talking about titles, the tendency to address someone with a title who is older than you or in a position of authority. And I will link that video into this one if you want to check it out. But today, what I wanted to talk about is Filipino culture and respect for elders. If you visit the Philippines or if you live there, or even if you hang around with a Filipino family in another part of the world, one thing that I think you'll pick up on is that Filipinos really respect and esteem their elders. And for me, this was a part of the culture that I really admired, and it's really a neat thing to observe and to experience. And I'll share with you a couple of specific examples, or maybe behaviors would be a good way to put it, that you can observe or hear that really demonstrate the respect for elders. One is pretty simple. That's that when Filipinos are talking with someone who is older or in a position of authority, they will tend to use the Tagalog equivalent of ma'am or sir, which is po, P-O. And as an example, let's just say that let me contrast a couple of scenarios with you here. Let's just say that a friend of mine asked me a question. Okay, we're talking about my peer, not someone who is older than I. And my answer is yes. Then I will just say oo, which is the Tagalog for yes, two O's, oo. But if I'm talking with someone who is older than I, especially someone who's in some type of position of authority, then I would say opo, which is yes ma'am or yes sir. And so you'll hear that all the time. You'll hear this po all the time, even if the one being addressed is not necessarily that much older than the other person. So it's just an example of the Filipino disposition of respecting elders and showing respect when possible. Now, there's another Filipino tradition that I observed, and you may have seen it on television, or you'll see it if you visit the Philippines, and that is called Mano. Mano is taking the hand of someone who is older than you, and you touch it to your forehead, and it's a greeting when you first see someone. And again, it is a show of respect for someone who is older than you. Mano is usually done, based on my observation, Mano is usually done more in a family type setting. So let's say you have someone who is coming home from school, a student. He may do that gesture with his parents and the grandparents when he sees them for the first time coming home from school. Or a college student who's been away for a couple of weeks and comes home may do that same thing with parents and grandparents. Children in particular will do this all the time. Children and teenagers are taught to do this when they are greeting someone who is older. Now, once you get a little bit older, this is something it's a little bit harder to explain, but the Mano tradition, once you get a little bit older, it is still practice. So you could be my age, 40 years old, and if you go see your parents, you're going to do this, or your grandparents. But outside of your family, the rules are a little bit more blurry based upon my observation. And I'll give you an example. Let's just say that you have a 25-year-old Filipino who has gone over to his buddy's house, and his buddy's parents are there. Let's say his parents are both 50 years old. He may not do that with his buddy's parents. He might. It just kind of depends. But I will say that his friend's parents would probably not be overtly offended if he did not do the mano gesture, just because it's understood that you don't necessarily always do that with people who are not your family, especially if the age gap is not so big. However, with the elderly, even if it's not your family member, there's going to be a tendency to do the mano gesture. So, or the Mano greeting, whatever you want to call it. So for example, let's say this same Filipino, 25 years old, goes over to his buddy's house. The parents are there, but let's say this time a 90-year-old great-grandmother is there. That 25-year-old, 99% of the time, is going to do the Mano with this elderly lady just because it's a way to show respect for her. Now, you may be wondering how you should handle these customs as a Westerner. I'll tell you what I did, and it's really kind of up to you, but I'll tell you what I did. The way I handled it may not be the perfect way or the right way, but this is how I handle things. As an example, whenever I was dealing with someone who was older than I, who I wanted to show respect to, I would use the opo. I would use this po, the sir or ma'am. For example, when I would go visit my wife's grandparents, they're the ones who raised her, I would try to use yes ma'am and no ma'am with them. Now, in terms of the mano gesture, most of the time, as best as I can remember, I would usually, when I would see my wife's grandparents, it was just more, I would give the grandmother a hug, the grandfather a handshake. And the reason was, for me, that just felt a lot more natural. And they were not offended at all that I did not do mano because I'm a foreigner. I did not grow up doing that. The funny thing, though, I remember when I would visit my wife's family, if we were sitting out on the front porch, there was an elderly lady in the community. Everyone called her Lola, grandmother. And she would just walk around and visit houses. If she would see us sitting out on the porch, she would come up to us. I would always do mano with Lola because there were just a lot of reasons for that. One, again, it's the rule. If someone is obviously quite old and elderly, there's a tendency that you will want to do this. And it brought a smile to her face. For me, it was a way to show respect to her. And also, being at that age, I'm sure she was quite traditional in the way that she thought about things. So that's the way I handled those kind of situations. So anyway, like I said, what you'll observe in Filipino life and culture is there's a lot of emphasis placed on respect for elders. So I hope this video has helped, and you're welcome to leave a comment below or a question, and I'll try to make another video soon.